when you speak to people, and especially listen to them, as I do in my coaching, but also on my Stoic walks and just in general when I speak to people, it's interesting when you hear certain topics come back. And one of them I wanted to address today is when people talk to me about their relevancy in life. And it's usually during moments of change, during moments of transition in a job or family or whatever, that this comes up, because then the situation changes. Something that they expected to be there forever is now going, and maybe they weren't as important as they believed. So that's when they have this on their mind. It's that idea that you're not as important as you thought you were. But, well, as you know, Stoics have an answer to these things, and I think it is an important one to talk about. Relevance comes from the Latin of kind of lifting up, of bearing towards something that, to a moment or a person that you matter, right? That you have some kind of influence, or people asking you for your opinion, that they look up to you, that they revere you in a certain way for your experience or for whatever, the relationship you have. But that's important to keep in mind. It's always in a relationship. It's never just a standalone thing. Relevance is always needed in the context of the social surrounding that you have. So it depends not just on you, but on the world around you. And it's therefore not a fixed thing, right? You can have all the experience you want, but if things change, let's look at AI right now. There's so many people who have jobs that suddenly can be done faster, quicker, and maybe even better than they did. So where is their relevance right now? Well, that's a good question. And I think that that's something that everybody needs to look for themselves. And maybe there is a lot more relevance, right? The experience that you have had will help grow these systems, or maybe you can pivot into something completely different. But that's really what this is about. It's that change. It's that flux of how things move. And this is not something new. It's not like suddenly AI came and this is the first time we have to deal with it. No, it's the Industrial Revolution. It's the come of the internet. It's, even back in the day, the invention of the wheel, these kind of things. So this is not new, and we have dealt with it before, and we can deal with it again. And it is an individual endeavor and an individual experience to undergo and to grow out of. And who knows? I've had so many changes that at the beginning I thought that they were horrible, the worst thing to happen. And now looking back at it, and as I think, this is actually very, very good to happen, because look at who I am right now and what I've been able to develop myself into. And that's also where the danger comes from when we are trying to chase this permanent relevance, where we are trying to be important forever, because that's not a thing. And if you try to cling on to it, just like anything else, even what the Stoics say, if you try to cling on to life, then death is going to be a horrible experience. But if you're able to let go and move along with, the tide and the flow of the river, you're going to be able to experience and to enjoy every stage of life. And I've had my encounters with this as well. Throughout my job experience, I remember working for a payroll company, and I was working for this client who was rather, technically more or less on the difficult side. But after a few weeks and months, I managed to create a complete system. I was really fast with most of the tasks and problems that came my way. And after a few months more, I've had this really covered. I knew exactly what I was doing. The client was super, satisfied with me. And to such an extent that the company said, hey, maybe we want to move you to this other team because we think your skills can be very useful there. And part of the fact that I spoke Spanish and Dutch, so I could translate between client and the support team and doing the technical side. So it's like, great, let's do it. Okay, so tell me about a handover. When do I train someone to replace me? Because, all this knowledge, it's a sad thing to let it go to waste. And the time, went on until the day I had to move, and they never assigned anyone until I left my chair and someone else sat in it. And that was it. No handover, no nothing. And I thought I was so important. I thought I was, the person who really managed all of this and did a great job, and that I would have had to share my knowledge so that they can keep doing my work. But no, stood up from my chair. Someone else sat there and did it their way. I was relevant for that moment, for that client. But afterwards, it's just a number, just a person sitting there and someone else doing it after me. And that's how it tends to go. We are assigning so much value to our own actions, to our own existence. While if we look who the amount of people and things have come before us and will go after us, it's innumerable. So why should we even worry about this? But if we do a good job in the moment, we can feel good about ourselves. That's what really the Stoics talk about, is you want to show up as the best version of yourself, not because of the importance that other people take out of it, not because of some kind of reward that you get for it. No, the reward should be doing the right thing, being the best version of yourself. That's what the Stoics asks of you. And that's really what this is about. It's about having a certain attachment to a situation, to a relationship, to some other people looking up to you, revering you in a certain way. And then when the change comes and the loss of that situation, of that pedestal, that's where it really hurts. And this happens in work, but it also happens when you raise children and they suddenly become independent and they don't need you as much anymore. What do you do then? Or with family or friendships who fade away? That's what the Stoics would call a false judgment, right? You would have your attachment placed so much to that role, to that part that you were playing, the significance that you carried, the responsibility, all of these things, and you've attached your identity to it to such an extent that now that it's gone, the world has fallen apart. But the only thing that has happened, and the Stoics and the ancient love to use the theater as a metaphor, your script got changed. You've handed a new book, that act is gone. Now the next one starts with a lot of great new opportunities. And if you are able to be flexible enough, and if you're just focusing on the moment and use your experience from the past, you can make that the best time of your life. But if you stay stuck to the previous act, you're never going to be able to focus on what really requires your attention. And we have to remember that being irrelevant also feels scary, right? We lose our part in society. We think that no longer we are needing of help or of savior or something like that. So there's a lot of fear involved with it as well. Fear and grief are all intertwined in this. You lose something, but you're also afraid of what might come. Maybe you're being shoved in a little corner and no one's asking for you anymore. And then you have to ask yourself what was really important. Why were you really doing it? Was it for the title? Was it for the admiration, the validation, all of these things? Or were you just enjoying what you were doing? Because if you're struggling with this topic in whatever situation in life you're in, ask yourself, what does relevance really mean to you? And this is something that I think we should do more often when we are struggling with these pivotal concepts, like in this case, relevancy, but also success or the good life. This is what the ancients were talking about all the time. That's what they wanted to try to find out. What does it mean? We have to sit with those definitions. We have to sit with those words. What does it really mean to you? To you specifically, not anybody else, but to you. And the moment that you are asking it, not yesterday, not in the future, right now. And when we talk about a subject like relevancy, it's also to whom? To whom do you want to be relevant? While things change, they change, you change, every day is a different moment. And maybe if you focus so much on work, you've not spent the time with the people who are closest, that closest circle. And we can look at Hierocles, who was a Stoic philosopher in the 2nd century, who made these concentric circles with yourself in the middle. And he said, you've got to try to bring the outermost circle, which is the cosmos, the logos, to the innermost. So they all should actually be the same, right? If you speak to a stranger, you should treat them as your cousin or your family member. You should all treat them the same. And if we can do that, then whether you are relevant to this specific person or that person doesn't matter. In that moment, you are all that matters. And that's how we've got to look at ourselves as well. So if we are thinking about this topic and we are struggling with it, we can apply the role ethics that the Stoic give us. Look at what you're doing. Examine your responsibilities and your duties in that moment. Related to whom? What is it that you have to do? And then do the best you can with the tools that you have, with the tasks, with all these things. Just do the best, because a lot of the times we don't even know half how relevant or important we are to the people around us. What seems like a mundane task to us, what seems like nothing really special, could be world changing to someone else. But that's up to them. That's not up to us. So relevant is pretty much an external concept. It's an opinion, a judgment on others about you. But a lot of the times we try to fill that in for others. If I don't do this, they will not like me like this. If they don't ask me for help, then I will be forgotten. Oh, they might just be busy with other things. That's the story that we build in our own head. Maybe we're not looking at the right people, the right relationships that could really bring value to our lives. So relevancy is never a fixed thing, although sometimes it seems like it, because if we stay in a job for a long time or with our families, then it seems like it's never going to lose. But then that change will come, suddenly. It just happens and it appears, and that's it. You got to deal with it quickly, right? When it's shorter intervals, it's a little bit easier to let go. But it's never this fixed thing. It's always about relationships. It's always about the situation that you're in. And those things are always in flux. And that's what we've got to learn. We've got to learn to be comfortable with change, to be comfortable with how things develop. But what always stays the same and what we can control is how you show up to that moment. What are your actions? What are your judgments? How do you look at the situation? That is entirely up to you. That has nothing to do with relevancy, and you can control that. You can work on that. You can tell yourself, this is how I want to show up. I want to preserve my character and my soul in such a way that whatever happens, I will be seen for the way I am. And not by anyone else, but by myself. This is how I want to show up, and that's entirely up to you. So ask yourself, who do you want to be relevant for? When is it? And what are the relationships that are involved? Because you're only as relevant as the moment requires of you. And then just do that. Do your duty, do your responsibility to the best of your ability.